when he got there, he come back and I got the original copy of the Treaty of Peace. And also, he was shocked when he found there were contracts and treaties and agreements made in 455 AD that are still alive and working today in the modern world.
Mm-hmm.
Now just think, if a treaty or a document goes back to 455 AD, still has ruling concepts on today's world, there's a lot of other stuff that people have no idea exists and why they are being controlled the way they are. And if they don't have this foundation, they're forever floundering around because they can't hit the nail, the head of the nail with a hammer. It's just all over the spot. So what happens is that, like I said, I mentioned Charles Warren's The History of the American Bar. If anybody really wants to get into some research, this is one of the books that I would suggest getting. Now, you might say, what authority has the Crown usurped the national sovereignty of the American people? Well, it's acceptable that the U.S. court decides constitutional issues in the U.S. Now, can it be considered being constitutional when the Supreme Court is appointed by and paid by the people who front the federal government, the Crown? They all operate under the Crown.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, if you go back into history, you'll notice that bills of credit were not supposed to be used, but yet every federal judge is being paid by a bill of credit. Now, who issues the bill of credit? Well, everybody says, well, the United States government pays them. The United States government might issue out of the department a bill of credit, a check. You go to and cash that, who pays it?
Well, wouldn't it go back to the Crown?
That's right. Right back to the Crown. And the Crown, as people should know, are the international bankers. Now, there are, in this system, the private Federal Reserve. The private Federal Reserve was the actual exchequer of England. Now, it's not exchequer of let me see. Let me put it to you this way. If I form a bank myself, and in a country that never had a bank, and what would you call it?
The first.
The first, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, all right, the first Bank of America, or the first Bank of the United States, was the private concern of the Crown. The Crown Templar came in and instituted the first Bank of the United States. It wasn't the government that instituted it. It was the Crown that was the initiator and under the blessings of Congress allowed the first bank to come in. Okay? Now, today's private Federal Reserve is an offshoot of that bank. It's the same thing, it's just the Federal Reserve. And in there you have the International Monetary Fund, the World Trade Organization, and the Bank of International Settlements.
Right.
All right. Now, even Hitler respected the Crown bankers because that's where he got his money from, and they were from Switzerland. The Bank of International Settlements in Basel, Switzerland, controls all the central banks of the G7 nations. And right there goes back to where the Crown and the Vatican was fighting, and the International Bank, who controls the gold, rules the world. Everybody knows that. So this is, a lot of your listeners are going to be rolling around, scratching their head and trying to think, how am I going to take this and put it all together? Well, I can't do it justice in a 1-hour show. I couldn't do it justice in a 10-hour show. This is years and years of work to get this.
But may I ask you something at this point?
Yeah.
Is it not true that the Vatican eventually, with the banksters, made nice.
Made what?
Well, they finally put the differences behind them.
Oh yeah, there was the. That's what it is. You have the Vatican cabal with the bank. Okay, and the tenets of the Church, of the Catholic Church, Catholic meaning universal, is that no man can own the land because the Pope supposedly. And what I liked about the 1828 dictionary, Webster's first dictionary, is he come out and called the Pope a fraud because he claimed to be the vicar of Christ,
right,
when no one really can be the vicar of Christ. He
right,
just appointed himself as the vicar of Christ.
Right.
And so that's why Christ went after the attorneys and, woe be unto you lawyers and so on and so forth. A good book to get is Rodell, who was a judge, and I can't remember. I got his book, but I don't have it at hand to give you the date. But it's fairly modern, and you might even be able to pick it up on the internet. I think his name was Frank Rodell.
Do we have a title for that?
Woe be unto you lawyers.
Oh, okay, beautiful.
And
Brood of vipers, yes.
Yeah, uh-huh.
Well, hold on a second, though. But I've been remiss in doing this, and you do have your information on against the grain,
right.
And the other thing is, though, you do have some things that are up for sale. Can we talk about them right now?
Well, the only thing that's there is two books. One is A New History of America, and the other is Which One Are You? It's a book where it has been knocked by government, like all the other books, because the book's title asks the question, which one are you? It doesn't tell you which one you are. It doesn't say, well, you're this and you're that, and so on and so forth. You have to make your own determination, but it's got all the info in there.
All right, and you do have on that website the books listed. You do really seem to have more than two. You have Which One Are You? Then you have Volume 1 and 1A Response. Yeah,
well, they were the offshoots. Some of them the offshoots of the first book, which was printed in 1990, and then the other one, which was in 1996, when even more information came out. And so they're the two main books. The other ones are small blurbs and booklet forms and stuff like that, yeah.
All right, and folks, when you do go there, there are stringent rules as to what I-Man wants with regard to remuneration, and please follow what he asks you to do. Now, there's one other thing I want to ask you.